Microphone check. 1 2 1 2. Is this mic on? Yeah, man. This show is gonna be lit. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I want to welcome everyone to the first In Workplace Abuse National Podcast. My name is Darell Finley, and I'm the national podcast host. Some people call me Darell. That's fine. Just call me. And I'm ecstatic today. I am so excited to be here today, not only because it's the first podcast being broadcasted on a national level for in workplace abuse. But my guest is someone whom I hold in such high esteem. I've worked with her behind the scenes on some other in workplace abuse stuff. She is the ultimate professional. She is someone who we all hold in high esteem, that are all a part of the national team. She's someone that's well respected in her environment and in her arena and in her profession. I mean, there's so many things she's done on that level. She's a 7-time Emmy Award winning journalist. She's a winner of the Edward R. Murrow Award for documentary. She's a voiceover professional. She's a model. And the list just goes on and on and on. And in all honesty, whenever I'm putting some projects together as it pertains to journalism or media or social media, I run it past her, and she will give you the truth. She will let you know where you need to work on things, as she has helped me immensely in my podcast journey. So it is my awesome honor and privilege, to just welcome my sister, my friend to the show, Andrea Morehead Allen. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
I am so happy to be here, Darrell or Daryl or
That's
my
funny.
friend.
Because now is it Andrea or Andrea?
Yeah,
Because
it's
just like you have
Andrea.
two names.
It's
Okay,
Andrea.
okay, cool, cool. Because a lot, I've heard people pronounce it different ways, just like they do my name.
Yeah.
But welcome to the show once again. I'm so happy, as I said, to have you
Mm.
here. It's like interviewing like my favorite athlete.
Oh my
So
gosh. I
yeah,
really
thank you for coming.
appreciate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've been working on this for quite some time behind the scenes. And you had a huge project on the national rally, which was an amazing job. That video was amazing, by the way. And we won't even get into the technical issues that you overcame to get that product out there so that the world could see it. I mean, we had a lot of technical issues, and that just speaks to you as a professional. So I personally know a lot about you because I've done a lot of research, and I've been following you since I've ever had an opportunity to meet you. But
Mhm.
tell the people a little bit about you for those who don't know who you are.
Yeah, Andrea Morehead Allen. People live from the Indianapolis area know me as Andrea Morehead. But since I left my 21-year career in Indianapolis, which is where I'm from, I have now added Allen, which is my married name. I've been married for almost 20 years. And leaving has allowed me to start kind of a rebirth, if you will, of life and a new identity. And let me just tell you, I love the person that I am now. I loved who I was before, but I love being able to be in a position where I can actually speak my mind, to speak the truth to power, and to not worry about whether or not a media conglomerate is telling me what I can and cannot say. So I'm excited to be able to be here, to be the first person, if you will, who's part of this podcast for End Workplace Abuse. And let me just tell you, I have not lived a better life until I became part of EWA. Just knowing that I was not alone in my own situation, which I thought I was. I thought I was isolated. I'm like, this is only happening to me. What's going on? And when I realized that this really isn't a pandemic, this is an epidemic, if you will, of emotional and physical pain that so many people are going through right now. But we don't know. In that moment, we believe we are the only ones going through this. And we go through a period of blaming ourselves and asking ourselves, what can I do? What should I have done? What can I do to make this better? And I didn't realize that this is a systemic problem, that over almost 70 million people are dealing with this on a daily basis. And I'm just excited to be here to share my story, to let people know who are listening that we see you, we hear you. Your story is valid. We believe you. And thriving in life is our birthright.
Absolutely. Well said. And I agree with you. The moment that I became a part of the In Workplace Abuse New Jersey chapter, my life changed. And I'm not personally experiencing it at this time in my life, but I have in the past, as most of us have. But but in my group and in the people that I come across that I meet, their stories are all so passionate, and it has taken so much of a toll on their lives and on their families' lives. So that's what we're going to try to dive into a little bit today. The other thing that that just amazes me is that you have. I'm not going to introduce the show. I'll let you do all of that stuff because you have an amazing show. But what I wanted to say was that one of the things that I've noticed that these entities use as a weapon is trying to segregate or silence or divide people to make you feel like you're just going through this alone. So I'm glad you touched on that point. In fact, I have a video that I have a couple of videos that I want to just run real quick so that we can kind of just take a quick peek before we dive into the Q&A section of the interview. So I'm just going to play this real quick.
Okay. Hey, sis and sir. Here's a little poolside confession for you. Here's the story. So one day, I had a private meeting with my TV station's president and general manager about my concerns regarding a lack of access to, the photographers and the producers because I never got any assistance from them. Need a little just extra water for this. I was doing everything by myself. And mind you, this is all happening as I was also battling triple negative breast cancer, the deadliest form for black women with a high reoccurrence rate. Yeah, I was working during my 2.5 years of treatment that also included chemotherapy, surgery, radiation, and then another year and a half of immunotherapy treatments. Now, that's another story for later, but let's go back to the meeting. So here I am in this meeting with my GM, the president of the TV station, and I voiced my concerns saying, hey, here are some specific examples that I need to tell you about that really are showing you that the two other female anchors, and I gave names, were given what I call the white glove service.
I love it.
Ooh.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it. The white glove service. And, I'm going to let you go ahead and interpret that for us before we dive into it. Go ahead and interpret that for us.
Yeah, the white glove service is the service that, think about it, when you go to a really fancy restaurant and if the waiters have on white gloves, it is formal, it is luxurious. You are getting the cream of the crop when it comes to service and the food. The experience is going to be top notch. That is the white glove service. So, in the broadcasting industry, the white glove service is having producers who were editing your stories, having producers also. I'm trying to keep this very simple so that people on the outside understand, but producers who are writing your stories, editing your stories, they're also looking at the tapes and going through all of it and deciding which sound they're going to use, selecting music. I mean, so on and so forth. I mean, it's just a long list. But suffice to say that those other two people who don't look like me were able to get the white glove service. On the
Hmm.
other hand, instead of me eating filet mignon on a beautiful china with great crystal glass, I had paper cup, solo cup. Let me keep it real. Solo cup, paper plate, paper napkins, paper silverware or plastic silverware treatment. I was invited to the cookout, but I was not at the big boy and big girl table. I did not get white glove service. So here I am going through cancer treatments,
Hmm.
working when I could, and literally the physicality, it was so hard for me to work, but I needed to keep going. I wanted to push through. What I didn't want, Daryl or Darrell, I'm gonna call you both, is for someone to say, oh, you use your cancer situation as an excuse not to come to work, to show up. And
Mm.
as Black people, and let's just keep it real, we're going to talk about this too from a racial perspective. We
Okay.
know that we have to be 10 times better. And I believe as I look back on that experience, I was doing everything that I could to try to mitigate the conversation, the rumors, the expectations that she's not going to make it. She's going to use this as a reason not to do her job. And so, because of
Wow.
that, I was overworking and overperforming, but I had to do it without access to the white glove service. So imagine the physical, the mental toll that all of that took on my body prior to cancer and during cancer and even after cancer, once I thankfully was told that I was in remission. But at the end of the day, it was not equitable. I didn't have access to photographers. I had to use my own cell phone to shoot stories, whereas the people who got the white glove service had preference for photographers. They were able to have access like nobody's business. And I saw it. Other people who look like me of color in the newsroom were having the same experience. And yet we would talk about it to ourselves at the water cooler. We text each other during work hours. We would talk about it on the weekends. And it just got to the point where I kept saying, why are we just talking to each other about it? We can't solve the problem. We have to tell the people who are in charge what we need, what we want, and for them to be held accountable and to give us what we need so that we can continue to do our job. And I just wasn't going to take no for an answer. And finally, I will tell you this. I'm 50, almost 56 years old. There's something that happens when you turn 50 where you're like, I'm just going to keep it real. I've got nothing to lose.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how old you are, Darrell, but I will tell you that as soon as you turn 50, there's like a light bulb that just
It
comes
does.
on.
It absolutely
And
does.
I had been there for 20 years at that point. And I just said, this is ridiculous. I continue to see the white glove service being doled out to certain people. There are about 4 or 5 of them. And I am over here scraping, trying to survive. And it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair
Wow.
because it was affecting my health. It was affecting my mental and physical health. And I just spoke truth to power and said, I
Mhm.
see you and I'm going to call you out and I need you to make this right. And one thing that I've learned in life is that when you try to hold people accountable, they buck because they know what you're saying is true.
Mhm. Mhm.
They know what you're saying is true. They just don't want to admit it to themselves. Because from a racial perspective, in their minds, they're thinking to themselves, are you calling me a racist?
Absolutely. Yep.
And that's where the problem lies. And I literally became a target. I have talked about all of the egregious, unconscionable behaviors that took place. I outlined them in a federal lawsuit when I filed a discrimination lawsuit against the company back in 2021. And yet, I haven't even told everything. There's so much that happened over the course of 21 years being there, over the course of several different management administrations that as people of color, we just learn how to kind of navigate. It's like we know what they're up to, we know what it is, we know it's racism, but we also know that once we speak truth to power, we become the target. And it becomes this battle between, no, we're not. Yes, you are. No, we're not. Yes, you are. And at the end of the day, the people who run the organization, the people who are the powers that be, they have the power to make or break your career. And that's what
Mhm.
happened to me. Once I decided to walk away, I said, I will continue to use my story to help other people. Because again, I thought I was isolated. I thought this was just happening to me. And when I found EWA, when I realized that this is part of the playbook for so many companies, this
Mhm.
is what they do because they know that you're on to them. They know. And they don't want to be held accountable. And they know that the laws are in their favor. So that's when they use all of these underhanded tricks to either terminate you or for you to walk away. And either way, they have won. In their minds, they have won. But I want people who are going through this to realize that no, honey, No, ma'am, no, sir. You have won. You have won your dignity back. You've taken back the respect that you deserve. You've given it to yourself. And I hope that you use your experience again to help other people realize that they're not isolated, that they're not alone, and that there is something we can do. And so, even though I talk about what happened, I want people to realize that I'm only sharing the story so that they understand the nuances of workplace bullying. And not only do they realize that they're not isolated, that they're not in this alone, but to do something about it. And let's now work towards a solution. This happened, but what are we going to do about it? And I have a 17-year-old son, and I look at him every day, and I just said, I cannot not say something. I cannot sit back and not allow myself to use my story to change laws. And so until my last breath, I will continue to fight for equity in the workplace because equality doesn't hurt anyone. It actually helps
That's right. That's
everyone.
right. Yep. You're absolutely right. It creates a fair game and it's a morale booster from what I've seen. Me and
Absolutely.
you have witnessed the video. We've shared the video that, I think it was around the time when you returned to the broadcasting station after your first chemo, I believe,
Mm.
and we talked about this. We chose not to. We as in workplace abuse podcast, we chose not to show the video because there was just so many other dynamic and important videos. But I remember you telling me that that it was an emotional time for you, and during that time, you were actually still going through this process of, for lack of a better word, racial discrimination and things of that nature. And these people are around you acting as if they actually care for you.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to share that that video was out there, but that to me was a really telling moment of your strength, internal strength to actually have to sit around these people. And a lot of us have to do that. We still have to go to work.
yeah,
We still have to participate in this unfair treatment, because we don't know what else to do, like you said. So I got another video I want to play real quick.
sure.
And then we'll dive in and talk about that. But I really appreciate your transparency.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
And here's
it's
one thing I want people to know before you play the video is that so many people are afraid to talk about the truth, to share their
hmm
story, because of, again, you're afraid of retaliation. And we get it. It's true. It happens. I mean, here I am 5 years removed from that station. And in 2024, they included a picture of me and a story on their air about an alleged crime of fraud that didn't involve me, but they put my picture as part of the story because I was providing some freelance work for this person. But because of that, they tarnished my reputation. But it was their way of saying, we're going to get you because you've been
wow.
talking about us. So I understand why people don't want to come forward and talk because you're talking about your livelihood. You are possibly going to upend your livelihood. And
hmm
I can tell you, full transparency, that has happened to us. But every day that I wake up, I say, God, you were going to provide. And for the last 5 years, somehow, some way, He always provides and comes in the nick of time. So I know that my life was meant to be used for this moment. And there's nothing they can do, there's nothing they can take away from me that is going to upend this movement, upend my life, and upend
hmm
me and prevent me from speaking truth to power. But I can tell you, again, it's one of the best things that has ever happened in my life. And so when I tell people, when they ask, should I talk? What can I say? The number one rule, if there's anything you take away from this podcast, is this: the truth, oh, the
Go ahead.
truth is always a defense. They
Mm,
can say
mm,
whatever
mm.
they want to. They can come against you and tell lies, but the truth is always a defense. And the reason why
Absolutely.
I can say what I'm saying and be open and honest about the truth is because you can't sue me on the truth. You can sue me for defamation if I say something that's out of turn, that's
hmm
not true, but you can't when I'm
That's right.
speaking truth.
That's
And
right.
as I tell people all the time, I've got the receipts and they know it.
Yes, Lord. Yes. That's a powerful statement right there. And I'm going to dive into that a little later too, because everything that you're saying is, I'm sure that there's someone out there actually in this space and time right now that you're describing who just doesn't know what to do. And that's why I'm grateful for you to be here today. I'm grateful that we've been provided this platform so that you can share your story. And there'll be many others that we'll be sharing periodically throughout the course of time, as we continue with our movement to try to get this stuff rectified. And we need legislation, which we'll talk about later. But let me play this video real quick. This is
Okay.
another great moment with my friend, my sister Andrea.
So we're going to educate ourselves about this unfortunately burgeoning problem. I will be using my story and the stories of others as well. As you can imagine, these are very uncomfortable conversations, but they are desperately needed so that the egregious behaviors will cease, so that the offenders will finally be held accountable.
There's another great moment and a great just another opportunity for us to converse with you. Every opportunity, folks, I'm letting you folks know to converse with this woman and this sister of mine. She is amazingly, because she's been through the fire. There's nothing like, and at a really high level. So there's some of us who go through this, and it feels the same emotionally, but there are levels to it as well. So I want you to just go ahead and speak to us a little bit about that video and the importance of just standing your ground and coming to a place and space where you could kind of feel like you want to fight back.
It all began after I began seeing a therapist in 2020. It was right during COVID, or it was actually a year before COVID. So many of the egregious things have been taking place, and I kept telling my husband, something's going on, and I just can't put my finger on it. And I don't know why. I'm asking for accountability, but no one is doing anything about it. And it just began to just build, moments just kept building one upon the other. And in the aggregate of all of those experiences, I realized it's not going to get better. And it hit me after speaking to my therapist for over about a year and a half. She made it very, very clear to me. At one point, she said, if you decide to walk away, you're not losing your career. You're walking away from a job, and your talents and your gifts will make a way for you again, just like they did the very first time. And so you're in a precarious situation where you need to make a decision. Are you going to continue to work within the environment that likely will not change, or are you willing to change your environment? And after I found out about my coworkers who were making a bet on whether or not I was going to return to work on those days when I was having chemo treatments, when a coworker told me the truth, and again, I've got the receipts. When she told me what happened, I I'm having a moment because I remember the moment that I was told where I was. I was in my car after the 6 p.m. newscast getting a Starbucks. I was in the drive through and she kept saying, I don't even want to tell you. And I was like, what's going on? And she kept going, I don't know. I'm so upset. And I said, listen, girl, if it's that bad, don't say it. Don't tell me. Like, we can talk about something else. And she finally said, I got to tell you. So when she explained what happened and she was crying and just beside herself, about 2 weeks later, my news director, I had written an email to him, the assistant news director, and three producers about a story idea. And that assistant news director responded to everyone
Mm,
and he inadvertently sent it to me. And
okay.
it was about me. And I responded, I'm sure you did not expect for this to come to me, but I see you. It's now written in black and white.
Mm,
And a few weeks later, George Floyd had died. I was doing a story on the reaction of Black women, mothers, grandmothers, just women, and their reaction to his death. And I took it from the foundation of the statement that George Floyd made when Derek Chauvin had his knee on his neck and he was crying out for his mother. And as that story ran during the 5 o'clock newscast, I had a second one that aired during the 6. After that 6 o'clock broadcast, it hit me that symbolically, I was George Floyd. They had their knee on my neck for years. And as I'm telling this story of other people's reactions, they're upset, they're crying, they're saying, we cannot believe that this happened. We see it with our very own eyes. And Chauvin tried to lie and say that George Floyd killed himself and all of those things that happened afterwards, where they tried to mitigate their liability by lying about who he was as a person and how he came to die. It hit me that I was living in the same environment, and I felt as if I was lying to the public. Here I am in this environment, and people think that I'm living this wonderful world as a TV anchor. That when they see the commercials and they see us all laughing and talking during the show, that all was well with my soul. And it wasn't. And in that moment, when the 6 o'clock broadcast was over, I talked to my producer about the third piece that was going to air at 11 o'clock p.m. And I literally said, and it was not planned, it was God who said, you're done. You're done. So I said, my last story can air by itself. I don't need to be on camera to promote it, to intro it, or to tag it. And she said, okay, that's a great idea. She's like, so I said, because I'm so emotional during the story. So it lives within the boundary. I don't need to promote it in or outside of the story. And she says, okay, well, let me know what you want to do on Monday, because we were all working from home during that time, because again, this is during COVID. And in that moment, as I told her that it could live on its own for the 11 o'clock p.m., God said, you're done. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I walked downstairs. My husband was home. He was in his office. And I said, I'm done. He goes, oh, you're done with the 6 o'clock show? I said, no, 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 no. I'm done. Call the attorney. I'm never going back there. And I never went back because, again, it was disingenuous for me to keep portraying that all was well when it wasn't. I was George Floyd. Their knee was on my neck, and I couldn't lie anymore about it. I had begun, after about a year and a half of therapy, to just really get comfortable and in understanding that what I saw, what I was experiencing was real, that it was not in my mind. I knew that at some point I needed to leave. I didn't know when it was going to happen because I needed my livelihood. So I was thinking, okay, I'll stay another year and a half, try to build up my resources. But there was something very prophetic about that moment. It was my dad's birthday, and it was allowing me to end my career on a story that was personal for me, because I was just as affected by what happened as the people I interviewed. And I couldn't lie anymore. I just couldn't lie anymore. And that was the day that I say I found freedom, emotional freedom, physical freedom. Yes, has it been hard? But I would do it all over again, because how I was treated was wrong. And they know it.
Mhm. Wow, thank you for sharing that and being, as transparent as you are. Like I said, I've worked around you a lot, and for some folks, this is the first time they're actually seeing you, and I'm certain that they feel the power and the impact of your story and how it's helping other people. You mentioned your dad.
Mhm.
Obviously, you've taught me well on how to prepare for these interviews. So,
You've done your
so yes,
research,
I've
right?
done my research, and I understand he wrote a book as well
He
earlier
did.
earlier on, and I've seen some. some footage of you and him on the show. Tell us a little bit about your dad, because I got that feeling that you guys had this could have this connection, this bond, and so just I just want to give the people a little bit of insight into him and your
Yeah.
relationship with him.
My dad is one of my heroes. And I look back now as a almost 56-year-old woman, I realize why I am all about equity and fairness and inclusiveness and diversity and equality. And my father is almost 80 years old. He's an HBCU grad, went to Grambling State University, and he's a black man. Yes, HBCUs. Howard, But he went to Grambling. He met my mother there when they were college students. They got married. And what a lot of people don't know about me, unless they've done the research, is that when you hear my father, he's a black man. He's got this big, booming voice. He's been in theater and as a speech communications professor all of his life. And so he taught me, if you will. I didn't even realize that his profession was going to help me in terms of what I'm doing as in my profession as well. But one thing that a lot of people don't realize is that even though you look at him and he has kind of he's a black man, he does not look like a black man. He is one of the thousands of people in our country and across the world who was born with albinism. And so, because of that, I've lived in a home where people have stared, looked, questioned, well, what are you? Is your dad white? And I'm like, well, his skin color is white, but he's a black man. He just has albinism. He doesn't have pigmentation in his skin. And so, because of that, I've grown up in a world where inclusiveness is important, diversity is important. And I know when people are being treated unfairly, because he's been in that world of being treated unfairly as a black man in white skin growing up in the South. So I've had that experience. It's a part of my life. It's been a part of our family's life for as long as I've been alive. And so I've always been that person who has protected those who are sometimes the least protected. And so I've been very protective of my father. Not that he needs me to protect him, he's a grown man, but you understand the spirit in which I'm talking about this is that,
Mhm.
equality is for everyone, equity is for everyone. And when you're not treating people properly, I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call
Absolutely.
you out. And that
Absolutely.
is our responsibility as human citizens, is that God made all of us, black, brown, Jew, Gentile, whatever we are, whatever background, culture, wherever we are in this world, there's a reason for that. It was purposeful and intentional so that we can bring all of our diversity, so it can all come together and create this beautiful tapestry, this beautiful gumbo, if you will, this beautiful mosaic, and to see how all of it connects together to create something bigger and better and more beautiful. And so, this whole notion that DEI is wrong, the fact that they've been able to hijack a word and not really understand what it means, is offensive. And
Absolutely.
so I will continue to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. I will continue to talk about the reason why we had to do that was because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. We can't trust you to do the right thing. So we need to put some guardrails in place to hold you accountable. That's the whole point. Now, if you had been doing that, we never would have needed to have DEI programs. If we
Mhm.
believed that you were going to be fair, if we believed and knew based on action that you were going to be fair in how you view me, how maybe the prejudices and the biases that you have, that you're not going to bring that to the table and use that as a basis for how you treat me or how you decide whether or not I get a promotion or how much money I get, whatever it is. If we trusted you, we would not have had to have DEI programs. But the fact that it's been hijacked, it has been spun around to believe that being woke and DEI are wrong. I will never subscribe to standing back and letting them get away with it because it's not true. So, not to get political, but life is political. The
That's
reality of
correct.
it is,
Hmm.
I stand for companies, I stand with companies, I stand with people who are all about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is what I was talking about. DEI is not just about hiring me. It is about being inclusive in how you treat me. It is about respect, dignity. It is about those character values that you claim are important. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when it comes down for you to put, your words behind your actions, a lot of times we're learning that it's very performative, that it's only based on the fact that it's trendy in the moment or that they're going to make more money.
Mhm.
So companies, people have decided that profits over people, that's more important. It's not. It should be the other way around. So my father's life really prepared me for this fight. I know it intimately. I know it intimately. And again, I'm always going to be his protector, his fighter, but also, we wanted to use his life. He did during this children's book to let people know that God made you the way he made you for a special reason, that all of us are made in his image, and that we all come to this earth with special gifts, and that this is intentional for us to learn how to work together, to be together, to support one another. And so, this notion that there's not enough for us all to enjoy the fruits is hogwash. There's enough money, there's enough shine for everyone. We all should be able to prosper and to thrive. So that's my life. That's what I've always dealt with, what I've always lived with, and what I will always use as a kind of a propeller to push me to continue having this conversation about equity and equality, diversity and inclusion.
And see, now you folks know why I love me some Andrea. Andrea, that this is why she has so many people who respect her, who follow her, who want to work with her. And you're right. We're especially now in this day and time. When we look at the political scene, which is another whole podcast that
Oh,
we'll
yes.
circle back on. But for those of who understand what we're saying and want to help us out, I'm going to pop up um, the EWA website so that you can log in there and find out more about what we do. Each state, well, most states have a chapter, and if there's not one in your area, we'll help you build one and get it together. This is a movement that me and Andrea, we stand strongly. We support it. We give our time, our resources, and everything we have to push this movement forward and to try to rectify this wrong. So thank you again, Andrew, for sharing all of that.
You're
I
so
have
welcome.
one more video that I would
Okay.
like for us to look at.
Oh, you're producing. I'm loving this, Darell. Look at you.
So I got one of the best teachers in the world. So I'm good. And it's been some, it's like anything else. You come in and you think that you know some things because you've looked on YouTube and you've got all this stuff, but it's not until you work with someone who has actually done it at a high level that you understand the learning curve that's required here. So I'm just happy to have you here and to be on the show with you and to share this moment. And I'm sure the audience, the listening and viewing audience, are really impacted by this interview, and it's gonna be great. So I'm gonna play this last clip, if I may, and we'll talk about it.
There's a lot of conversation out there about what exactly is workplace psychological abuse. If you've ever been yelled at, screamed at, if there's ever been any moments of isolation, retaliation, manipulation, gaslighting, discrimination, any of those things and so many more unconscionable behaviors. Anything that gets in the way of you being able to perform your job to the best of your ability is workplace psychological abuse.
Wow, I could not have rounded and summed